All right, so we're about to get started, guys. We wanted to take this halftime. Really, for me, this is probably the halftime is a highlight for what we're doing. And so, obviously, this is just a moment where we're beginning to what I call build momentum for what we're doing with our men. And so, Lorenzo reached out to me 3-4 weeks, it was about a month ago. About a month ago, and just like, man, we want to do something for the men. And how many of y'all feel like it's good for us to get together as men? I really do. And I know that it's hard sometimes for men to get together and to, do this type of stuff. And so we want to continue to do this. I talk about we're better together, and I want to have opportunities where we as a men come together just to be men. And so that's important. So Lorenzo is going to share in a moment. And I believe we have a wealth of amazing men in here. Lorenzo, 15 years? Yes. 15 years in the NFL. And then we got my man, Ray Brown. Ray, how long did you play?
Forever,
Yeah.
ever.
20. So Ray played 20 years in the NFL, man. And what I recognize is that God has given us a wealth of amazing people in our midst. And so we're going to take advantage of that. And when we talk about sports, really what we're doing is talking about life. And so what I like to do is just kind of open it up to you all that we'll do this. And we're going to try to do this hopefully every 6 to 8 weeks, something where we're together. We invited the young boys as well because we want to begin to build relationship and strengthen our relationship with our young boys, okay? And so as parents, as fathers, as uncles, just as mentors, this is so needed. And we just see things where we're going to help our young boys and help them understand the things that we've gone through. So with that being the case, do we have that video? Okay, let's watch Lorenzo's video.
Every story has its beginning, and for Lorenzo Alexander, his story has made history.
Lorenzo Alexander is the force and the linchpin of the Buffalo defense.
Dominate your matchups. There ain't nobody else I'd rather go to war with today, baby. For 60 minutes, hit these cats in the mouth.
Really good job. Lorenzo Alexander was just coming from the edge.
At 33 years old, Alexander became the first Bill to have 7 consecutive games with a sack, while making his first Pro Bowl as a position player.
Is it crazy where you were brought in as a special teams guy and now you're going to the Pro Bowl as an outside linebacker?
Yeah, when you think about it, because it was unexpected. No one would ever guess, not even myself. I mean, I know I have the ability to play in this league, but that wasn't my role coming in. And it just goes to show you always got to stay ready for any opportunity that presents itself. Because at some point, whether you're in life, whether you're playing sports or not, you're going to have an opportunity to shine, and you have to be able to take advantage of it.
His success, no one saw coming, as Alexander's faith-tested journey to the top has been nothing short of an upward climb. Seen as a journeyman, he bounced around multiple teams, but a man of courage only needs one opportunity.
I think when he finally got his opportunity to make plays, he went out there and took advantage of that.
Doesn't see the pressure coming from behind. Then he is sacked and the ball comes out. Roethlisberger fires short. It is picked off. Lorenzo Alexander makes the pick. Just what they needed. Pocket collapsing. Bortles gets away from pressure, runs to his left, and he is dropped.
Really good job. Lorenzo Alexander was just coming from the edge and little bull rush.
The guy plays hard. He kind of came out of nowhere. We see him on film, and he goes balls to the wall each and every play. There's a lot of respect for a player like that, especially at his age. He plays every snap like it's his last, and that's what you have to do in this league.
Lorenzo Alexander has scaled football's Mount Everest. He is a true champion, changing the culture as a veteran player while impacting those in his community. Lorenzo's passion for being a blessing to others has inspired children of all ages to recognize the importance of self-worth, spiritual health, and educational excellence. Yet his greatest victory has been his triumph of character, for he has proven that answering the call to courage is not what he accomplishes, but what he can overcome.
That's really cool right there. It kind of threw me back to when I played, got me excited. Obviously got Sunday games on today, and this is my second season that I'm out of the NFL. I had a chance to play for 15 years, and so it's really cool to kind of reminisce a little bit and just remember the relationships and the impact that I received from players and I was able to make on other people's lives. And before we get into the day, because we probably cover a lot, I kind of want to highlight three things, and some of it just kind of came up today when I was just talking. Ben had one of his friends here that plays on the team, and he's a holder. And he was like, well, I don't really do too much. I just hold. But I don't think he knew that I played special teams. And I said, man, don't downgrade your position, brother. Man, you hold the ball, right? You got to catch the snap, hold the ball, and then the field goal kicker got to kick it through. And most of the time, laces out, right? So you got to do your job to get 3 points or 1 point, right? And so never downgrade your position of what you do, right? You have a role that has been given to you and ordained by God, and live it out to your fullness. Don't ever downgrade where you're at in life because you're making an impact. It may be small, it may be a little bit different, right? I was never a Hall of Fame player, but I made impact. So it's one thing to be humble, but never downgrade who you are in that process. And I want to say the important thing is that we represent God in that role, right? While we're working, while we wait. I'm not saying being complacent, but being content where we are and then working while we're waiting and representing God. You know, it kind of threw me back when Demo was talking. He always used these references, so I'm going to use an old school one too. The Source Awards. I know all my dads will remember this, you know, back in the day when we had that East Coast, West Coast beef, right? And Snoop shows up and he said, man, I know where I'm at, right? I know where I'm at. I know I'm in the East Coast, but I'm going to still be from the West. I'm going to still rep. That's what we should be doing as Christians in wherever workplace that we're in, right? Whether we're coaching, whether we're in the office, whether we're outside, whatever you do, you're representing Christ. Just like I got this Buffalo Bills hat on, right? I play for a whole bunch of organizations, but I'm intentional about representing the Bills because that's where my connection is. We should be intentional about representing Christ and what he's done in our lives every single day. And I think the best way we can do this is not allow the world to define us, right? We have all these different social constructs put together. I'm in grad school right now, so it's making me think a little different. You know, Nemo talked about going to the grocery store. They're intentionally trying to serve you something up that is not the best thing for you. So don't allow the world to define you. Obviously, allow Christ and the Bible to. The world, for me, has been a great way to put things in context of how people operate, right? Because most people are from the world and dwell in that. So to allow me to impact them. So it gives me context and then gives me connection, right? I didn't have Christ all the time in my life. I had a grandmother that took me to church, but I didn't adopt him as my own until I was 25, 24 after Sean Taylor's death, to kind of give you a little context around when that occurred. And for me, my prior life just gives me a connection to how I can maybe approach somebody, right? That I'm not perfect. I understand what you're going through. I've been there. But I know this cat named Jesus Christ who can change that in your life. And so don't allow the world to define you, but use it as context and connection in order to impact people's lives that you come in contact with.
Very good. I want to, if I can, and obviously I think it makes sense. I look through life through the different events of my life and how God moved. And so obviously football was a major part of your life, but I don't think people realize how much of a transformation and kind of metamorphosis you had to go through. Because I remember when you were in Washington, kind of D lineman and all of that. And so can you kind of explain, it's one thing to say you played in the league for 15 years, but tell about that kind of that transformation and metamorphosis and how that took place.
Well, it goes back to my first point about position. I entered the league undrafted. You know, everybody dreams when you're a little kid, being able to go across the stage, you know, high-fiving Goodell, being that first rounder with a team picking you. But nobody chose me. I had the opportunity to choose teams. And when I was coming out, I was a 300-pound D tackle. And by the end of my career, I was, you know, as you saw in that video, I was about 240, 245. And so there had to be a massive transition and transformation that had to take place in my life. And a lot of that was humility. A lot of that was getting closer to God and understanding who I needed to become and what I needed to do. But again, I wouldn't change it for the world as far as how I came in, because what I was able to accomplish as a undrafted guy, you know, being on practice squad, doing every single rep in practice. And Ray knows this. When I was in 2006 with Joe Gibbs, I took every single rep you could possibly take in a practice showing the squad. And this was back before this new watered down vanilla stuff where you don't put pads on every day. This was a Joe Gibbs, old school, think about 1960 footballs type of training camp, 2-a-days, and then I go right into the season where we put on pads Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and he was all about being physical and hitting you in the mouth right there, right? So, and I did that. I gave a little team for the offense, the defense, and special teams. And so that's how I actually birthed the niche by the way I worked. You know, I played tackle, I played guard. Ray coached me. I played some tight end. I played some fullback on offense. I played some defensive tackle. So it wasn't something I wanted to do. It wasn't my ideal, but God was creating something to give me validation later in my career, because then I could talk to young guys that were coming in the league and they saw my work and my process of how I became this undrafted dude to a captain. And then it also allowed me to create a niche in the league for myself by being this Swiss Army knife, right? And so even though I didn't want to go through it, it was the worst time of my life as far as a physical standpoint, and being the guy for all those years growing up, and I had to be humbled. He was preparing a path for me to create longevity in the league. So not only could I impact players, but obviously provide for my family. I have two of my sons, or my sons over here, two of them right there sitting here. So that is kind of what I saw in that. But that took some time to understand and have the ability to kind of look back. And so when we're going through those times, I've learned to try to see it from God's perspective and not my perspective, because anything that's worth has a price to be paid, and it's not going to feel comfortable. I mean, getting outside of your box it's not comfortable. It's not cool. And another time he did that, you know, I was an all-pro special teamer, Pro Bowler, 2012, and he moved me from Washington. And God moved me from Washington to Arizona. I didn't want to go. I was comfortable. I was in my box.
I wanted you to go. I knew we were coming here.
Yeah,
I wanted you to go.
I had the greatest thing set up. I had Pastor Brett, who was our pastor when me and my wife got married and got baptized. I had all these great leaders, London Fletcher, just around me, great relationships. That's where I thought I wanted to end my career. And for whatever reason, they decided they didn't want to sign me back. And I literally cried, like, man, what are y'all doing? Why y'all not signing me back? They pulled the deal, and I ended up out here. But for me, it was all about growth, right? I was in this comfort zone spiritually, and God wanted to move me and take me out. And I think he also put me here, too, because Pastor Demo was moving his church in a year. So, and I didn't know that, though, at the time. And so, but it moved me out, and I became a leader of men by that transition. You know, London Fletcher was no longer there, so I had to become a leader on the defense of the Arizona Cardinals at the time. Had to become a spiritual leader. We didn't really have any type of player-led Bible study, whether it was for the men or the wives, and me and my wife kind of started to create that. And for me, I had to really dig in, because now I was in a leadership role, and I wanted to be prepared.
Yeah. And so that was honestly, I was actually elated when you were coming, because I knew that we were going to be transitioning, and you and a few others probably played the most formidable part of who we are as a church. And a lot of people don't realize this. When we had moved here, you had just recently come here. I think you were fixing up that house. It was the first one you were standing in. And our first Bible studies and things of that nature. And so that transformation process, and I think all of us should recognize that God will move you, he'll transition you, he'll even kind of change, quote unquote, your position, and it's for the need of something greater. And so because there was a transformation that even took place with you in your career in terms of your relationship with Christ. And so when you first came into the league, what was that like for you? And then when God came into your life, what were some of the things that you felt like changed, whether it's motivation, things you wanted to do? But what was that transformation like for you as a football player because Christ came in your life?
Yeah, it was before Christ. It was definitely a different motivation for me. And I allowed the world to kind of define who I was. I grew up in Oakland, California, single parent, right? And what you see and what you're told, for the most part. And I was good in school and stuff, but I still conformed my mind to money, women, and fame. That was kind of my thing in my immature mind, right? And even when I became a grown man, and I even say that a lot of us that, are grown men, we still have a lot of boyish tendencies. And I carried that mindset with me through college and all the way into the NFL. And I had essentially achieved my dream in some ways of what I wanted to accomplish, but still felt empty, felt unsatisfied internally. And people would look at me, are you in the NFL? But secretly, going out, kicking it,
going to clubs, drinking, the different women, the relationships, the unhealthy relationships I was enduring in really wasn't fruitful. It didn't, and it was easy. It's what I was supposed to do, right? But I didn't feel anything from it. And it really took a shock of, and I hate that this occurred, but Sean Taylor passing in 2007, same age. Dude was one of the greatest players to ever be around. And just the way that shook me to my core, like, man, what am I living for? What am I impacting? And we had a great team chaplain, Pastor Brad. We had some other great, Antoine Randall, James Thrash. Just some really good, Ray. Just some really good brothers that were living life differently. And I had already been intrigued, like, man, we getting whooped, and these dudes walking differently, man. They talking about Christ, and I don't see them in the club with me when I'm out, right? Yeah. When they're with their wives and their kids, just something different about them, and it's like infectious that you want to be around. And so between seeing that, learning who they were, and then the catalyst of Sean Taylor passing really just pushed me right in the direction of where I needed to be, and that was submitting my life to Christ at the end of that season. And since that point, it's not easy, right? Because I said before, anything that you want that's worth having a value is going to cost you something. And to your point today in your sermon, I had to submit daily to myself. Because there's at times where that song come on, or I go back to Oakland, I'm with my guys, right? And I'm like, man, Oakland! You can kind of, you feel that internal thing that you're still a part of. And I have to have a conversation. I have to be intentional about who I say I am, who I know I am, and what I want to do and what I represent. No matter if I know who's looking or not, right? Because somebody's always watching you. And so that's kind of where I have evolved to as far as being mature and being disciplined. And that's where real manhood is, right? Not doing what you want to do, but what you need to be doing, and obviously honoring God.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your honesty and transparency on that, because I say it all the time, we all have our own personal struggles, right? I call it my demon, right? And so sometimes I got to face my demons. And in the midst of everybody else seeing you for whatever it is, you still know who that person is in the mirror. And then you talked about Sean Taylor, which I remember being around the organization then, and it was literally something that I don't think anybody will ever be able to just act like life was normal after that, because he was so talented, so gifted, so young. And I remember walking in that organization that next morning after everybody was just hoping that he was going to, make it. And then that next morning, a lot went into that, and it took a lot out of it. But what was the one thing that you most vivid, like you said, it was in that season of time that you felt like God just really shook you? What do you feel like, what was it that really caused you to make that decision?
I don't know what one thing it was, but I think having a relationship with Sean and being able to watch him work, and not even as a football player, everybody probably remembers, with spitting on somebody in the Tampa Bay game like the year before, him having maybe like some other things that were more public, but not really understanding who he was as a person, and some of the transitioning that he was going through from being a boy to being into a grown man, and being able to see that with Pastor Brett and some of the other guys that had wrapped their arms around him, he just stopped. He was trying to find it, right, go in the right direction. I think that more so anything told me, like, tomorrow's not promised. I don't have no more time to wait. And I think that is really what caused it, because I got to see that kind of up front. Man, that dude was doing all that. Well, I think I'm invincible. He's actually moving in the right direction, trying to do things the right way. And it's still, man, tomorrow, man, let me. I don't have no more time. Let me do it now. I think we always feel like we have time to wait till tomorrow, right? Time to do, we can turn our lives over tomorrow. Time to spend with our kids tomorrow, where we don't. And so I even have an issue, and I think we can go overboard the other way, and I have that a little bit now. Like, I'm coaching my son's teams, trying to run a league, trying to do this and all that, because I feel like I don't have tomorrow because of that event. Yeah. But I'd rather much be more active that way, right? Trying to grow closer to God and trying to be impactful and go overboard that way than sit on my hands and sit back and kind of watch everybody else and just kind of stay stagnant in a lot of ways.
Yep. And that's what I appreciate. I appreciate, the impact and the desire to make an impact in the lives of people. And the many things that you do, and they're numerous. But I see just the impact, and I'm always elated to be able to see that. What are some of the things that even when you think about us as men, what are some of the things that you are most passionate about when you think about us as men, be it our families, our impact? What are some of the things that you're really passionate about as a man?
Yeah, it's definitely, family. Obviously, that's where it starts at, and I think you guys did a great job of like embodying it in our mission, right? Loving, living, and then leading, right? And that's what we should be embodying as men as a whole, especially in our household. It's much easier to go out and talk to kids and work with other people's kids, or even get up here, because you guys don't. Everybody here doesn't intimately know me, and I think that's a much easier task at times. But really making sure that we're being intentional about focusing our work at home and how we're leading in the household. Obviously your spouse knows you better than anybody else and is going to constantly kind of press up against you. And I think as men, we have to be courageous and be able to figure out how we can overcome that and really be impactful in the household, and especially with our kids. I grew up in a single family, as I said. My dad wasn't around. He has since, given his life to Christ, and we have a great relationship now. But I had a placeholder, my Uncle Steve, to really step in for me and show me what that looks like to be a man. And so I want to pay that to my kids too. So that's kind of what I'm really passionate about, is being a father, growing up, and so that they don't have to endure some of the generational curses that were passed on to me from my dad and from my grandfather and just the family. And so I just wanted to cut that off and then just allow them to be impactful at a much earlier age. Because if I had any regret, it would be not adopting Christ as my Lord and Savior much earlier in my life, when, my grandmother was trying to show me. I had other teammates trying to show me in college. Justin Forsett was another guy that was really impactful in college, and the way he lived his life in that environment. I was like, oh my gosh, something is different about you. But it took me until I was 24, 25. And so that is what I'm really passionate about, making sure that family unit is on pack. Because when we have strong families, we have strong communities, and it just impacts our communities that much better.
Yeah, I love it. This will be the last one. I always say this, man. I sit, and when I'm preaching, I get to sit and I get to look, and I'm like, man, like there's amazing potential, right? Like there's amazing potential when I look into the lives of people, and I look into just like the gifts that we have, like in us. And, as you sit and you look at whether it's the men that are here, but even kind of the call that that God has placed on us as men, what do you envision for the men that God has called you to walk with? What do you envision for our lives together? How can we as men, in your mindset, how can we be all that God has called us to be?
Well, the biggest thing for me is, obviously none of us are designed to walk alone. And I think we oftentimes want to go alone for whatever reason it is, like to either prove like, hey, I got this, I'm the man, I'm the leader, right? And then you realize how you may go a little bit quicker, right? But you're not gonna go as far as you need when you're in a sense of community. And I truly believe that is essential for us to be as impactful as we say we want to be. And that doesn't mean you have to be buddies with every single person, but you definitely have to individually, right, find a group, 3 or 4 that you're going to ride with. And maybe you guys have a passion collectively that you want to move within the church, right? And then as a body, we have these moments where we come together and kind of talk about what we're doing, and so that we can continue to encourage each other and just be in community. And I think that's essentially what we have to and need to do. It's just, and I found this to be true because, like in my foundation work, right, I have a ton of teammates where we all are doing the same work, but doing it apart, and it's like it's not as impactful versus if you have everybody in here working collectively together. And so, just want to encourage men just to come together. Talking to a group earlier, it's about 3 or 4 of them that are real tight. Hold each other accountable. Really ask those intimate questions, right? Have those times where you can grow and push on each other. That's what it's part, right? Iron sharpens iron. But that's almost become like just a saying, instead of really having that intimate interaction with one another and really say, hey, man, what's going on with your wife? Or, I know you have an issue with pornography. Hey, what's going on with that? And really having those conversations. We talk about being brothers, but we really got to be vulnerable and humble enough to be able to share our shortcomings. And you can't do that with everybody, right? But you find that 3 or 4 that you're willing to walk with, and that you trust and honor, and that they're looking for the same thing, so that we can grow and be more impactful collectively. And so that's what I would encourage us, and that's my hope for us in those small groups, in our little kind of cohorts. And then when we come together, we're even more impactful when we want to do something corporately on the church level.
Yeah. So in football, and it's kind of like you have the team meeting, right? And I was one of the young guys with Ray. And so Ray, if you're a rookie, you couldn't go sit in somebody else's seat. And so seriously, like you're a young dude, you make the team, you think you all of that, right? And so you go into the team meeting room and you'd sit down and a dude would be like, hey, Rook, that's my seat. Uh-huh. And so the veterans had their own seat, like, and you better not get in their seat, right? And then I remember when my career was over, I'm like, somebody else is going to sit in that seat. Remember that? Kind of crazy. Somebody else is going to sit in that seat. Somebody else is going to be the veteran. And I remember, and I think this is for us, sometimes we feel like we're the rookie and we don't have a place, right? But God has given us a place as men to really be something amazing. But we will start in the meeting room and then we will break up into our position. All of us. Lewis, you remember that? You go to your position room. And that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about small groups. So I was a defensive back, and so all of the DBs would go in one room, and all of the receivers, we all had our own rooms, but that's where we collectively grew together, and then we would come back together as a team. And then you put this thing together, and you go out there, and it's like you play, and you play to win.
That's great. That's a great analogy. And I would even say this to kind of echo what you're saying. Like the rookies, I had to do this too, and then started developing this culture. Hey, you just wait for all those vets to sit down, right? And then you find your position, right? And it may not be a seat you want to sit in. You may be right in front looking at the head coach, right? But that's where you got to sit. And then in that moment, wherever you're at, right, then you start working with that position. Whatever that God has given you to cultivate, do that wholeheartedly, right, to him. Honor that. And then as you go through life with that mentality, you will be blessed. It may not be ideally what you think it is, but you're going to be going in the right direction. I wrote something down here as far as, I'm in grad school and going back to defining, letting the world define you. All these studies and things that how we dictate our lives, it's all has error in it. It's all correlation, right? There's no real causation of A to B, right? But I've never seen a guy who's given their heart to Jesus wholeheartedly not be changed, not have impact. I haven't seen it. It doesn't even make sense to me. When that spirit is moving through you, when you've submitted your life, you're going to impact people. So that's the goal. It's not to get all this money or a house or car. It's to have a legacy of impacting people and leading them to Jesus Christ. And that's ultimately, that's our reward. I think sometimes we're looking for, I want that contract, in football sense, I want that promotion. But that's not what it's about. It's about how have I impacted people in the position that God has given us. And if we have that as our motivation and that as our goal, we'll go so much further in life because we're positioning ourselves in the right way in context to God.
First of all, man, I thank you. I thank you for this, and we're gonna keep doing this and pull all of these guys up here because I think not just the stories about football, but the stories about life. And so I always think about like some of the people who've impacted me along this way. You said something when we were talking and it just shook me. And so we were talking about, I said, what makes a person elite? And I'm thinking you're going to tell me it's all of the training that you do. Like you took me to your house and trained me one time and I ain't never been back, have I?
Ben ain't been back either. So don't man, ain't him. Ben ain't been back either. He's scared back there. Yeah. You don't call me out there for the workout. You get your brother that don't even work out no more. And he's still probably dogging you too. Yeah, man. Come on back.
And so you hear about all of this hard work, this training, what makes it elite. And it is hard. And I think sometimes elite scares people like me. Like I came that one time and we did this, bro. And you said this was the warm up. I'm like, oh, no, dog. This is it. This is like, it's over. Yeah. And you kept going and you kept going. And I remember that. And
that's learned though. You got to be okay with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You got to be around somebody that's going to push you outside that comfort zone. That's when you really know who you are and where some of your weaknesses are and how can I grow. It's not like I showed up like that. I mean, if you ask my uncle, he would say, man, that's the laziest dude I ever knew when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, even through high school. So I had to learn how to do that, being around other impactful men, whether it was football related or spiritually, that was just on another level. Like, I don't want to do that, but that guy would pull me along, right? Yeah. So that's what mentorship is so important, right? Yeah. That's why it's so important for us to be impactful men, impactful fathers, impactful in your school as young men. Pull these dudes along with you. Yeah. But it's definitely something that takes used to. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable. You have to be okay with looking silly, right? And that's what I tell my boys all the time. But over time, by repetition and practicing and being disciplined to picking up your cross daily, right?
Yep.
And whatever we're talking about, whether it's spiritually or vocationally, that's the only way you're ever going to increase your capacity to really represent Christ and who he's called you to be.
Because you said this. I said, man, what makes elite? And you said being receptive to others helping you and being humble. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, dog, you got to what was the lift? You know, what was your max and all of that? And you said being receptive to others and humble enough to allow them into your space. And where did you get that from?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
You know, I was just doing a show this week, and sometimes you got to go through stuff. I was doing a show this week with Doug and Luke now, and they were talking about how the great leadership and how that was going to help this team not have the stumbles of they had a great win last week and then coming out flat this week versus, I forgot who they were playing, Minnesota, where last year they did the same thing. They had a great win the first week and then came out flat against Detroit Lions, who they should be, right? And I said, well, they had leadership last year. It's the same thing. The difference is that now Kyler and some of those young guys have life experience, right? Sometimes we just, based on what we've done, we try to base our world around that, but they have life experience.
Yeah.
And so now that they understand what it takes, they know what to expect. So it's not necessarily the leadership, it's actually going through things. And so I had to learn that. You know, and I think I share this more with you, just the way I talk. But I got a little cocky side to me. If you don't know me, I come across real humble and just chill.
Got
right?
that dog in you,
Yeah, but I've been humbled so many times. You know, fortunately, I've won more than I lost. But I've been humbled so many, whether it's in practice, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in my marriage, where you have to be humble and realize that's the better way. Yeah. Every time I've gotten cocky or just put myself first, things didn't turn out well. Yeah. So I think it was part of just watching other people, but that practicality of going through it and at some point making a decision in my life like, hey, I got to do it this way in order to get the results that I need to have.
Very good. Awesome, man. Well, like I said, thank you, man, so much. I thank you. Many people don't know it. Like, we get together and we just say it like, bro, this ain't no position. This is just us growing together, right? We sit, we try to talk about life and we try to grow together, and that's been impactful to me, and I think we've learned that kind of from Pastor Brett. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of exported it here, and so I thank you for that, for the relationship that we have together, and I appreciate it. Obviously you've excelled on so many levels, but in many ways the building blocks are still the same, and I'm grateful for that, and I look forward to us really impacting the lives of men and young men and boys and all of that. But as you know, as we end, what's your final words of encouragement to the men, the young men and the boys?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is understanding who we've been called to be, right? We don't have a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind, and take that wherever you go. And don't compartmentalize that. I think this is kind of my final thought right here. As a football player, as whatever you do for your profession, oftentimes we have all the characteristics we need to be great in every aspect of our lives, right? We're disciplined, we show up on time, we do more than what is our job title, right? We lead people in our office so that we can be more productive. But when we leave that job, when I leave, whether it's football field, if you're lifting weights, running and stuff so you can be great, when I leave that space, then I decide, okay, let me be mediocre, right? We cannot compartmentalize Christ and who he's called us to be and these characteristics that we have just to our vocational life. What we do mostly as men is kind of what I've seen. We need to make sure that we carry those things, carry that spirit, to how we are husbands to our wives. How do we parent our children? How do we serve the community and not just be great in one area? We've been called to be way more than that. And we all have the capability of being that, just that, being great.
Very good. Well, we're going to close out in prayer, guys. We'll finish watching this game. I think we have a raffle. I don't know where the ladies are. Okay, we have a raffle. So if you guys signed up and you got your deal, we have a raffle. And what was it? Is it gift cards? Okay, one or two? Okay, so we have two $25 gift cards. And so I'm going to shake this thing up. And as we do, listen, this is just the beginning of us growing together as brothers, and ultimately who we become is us, right? And each one of you bring something to this. You really do. I kind of threw this thing together and prayed that the food would get here and all of that. But we have some amazing people here that can help us go to the next level. And this is one of the ways that we grow together. I've learned that the way we grow together is serve with one another. We do something together as a team, serve with one another. This brings me back to, like, I remember we've done football camps and communities and stuff back in Northern Virginia. Guys, you know, we can really touch our community just with the men that we have in our church. And so us pulling something together to serve our community, as well as serving one another. We talk about small groups. Let's say you went out there, oh man, I wasn't feeling any of those small groups. Well, we're a small group, right? We can start a small group with the men in here and really begin to live out what we just talked about. My story has always been that one of the most impactful things that ever happened to my life is when I had a locker next to Ray Brown. And so Ray Brown is my dude. He's like, Demo, I remember this so vividly. And I was complaining. I wasn't playing. I was on practice squad or whatever it was, and I wasn't playing. And Ray sits there, and he just looks at me, and he's like, hey, man. He's like, you're sitting here complaining about not playing. And he said this. He said, my dad told me, don't complain about not playing. Use that time to prepare for when you do get in the game. And it messed me up. And it wasn't just about football. It messed me up. And I'm indebted to that man. And he just like, Demo, that wasn't a big deal. No, I'm indebted to this man because he truly changed my perspective as a football player, but more importantly, as a person. And so I tell him as many times as I possibly can, and I'm going to get him up here as well so he can share just his life experiences. But that's what it is we need to be brothers to one another. We need to grow together. We need to walk in relationship with one another. And it's hard for dudes. Like, I like to wave at y'all. You good? Yeah. But sitting down and having that serious conversation, for whatever reasons, our wives seem to do it so much easier, don't they? I'm like, man, like y'all make it look easy. But for us, man, we just got to get past that uncomfortable moment and get to that sweet spot of relationship and you know, being able to watch. I've watched this man grow with his family and all of that, you know, and I've been able to watch relationship with Ray and his wife and his kids and so many others. But it was all when we started back in Virginia, right? And that's why God brought us here. Is now we get to do it here, right? And we get to do it with all of our amazing brothers here. And so you might feel like a rookie, like this seat don't feel right, and it's made for somebody else, but it's your seat. And now we get to do it together. Amen? All right, so let's do this. Let's do this raffle. And then I think we've got your information, so I'm just going to use that as kind of your registration as like a group email, and I'll be reaching out to you all, and we'll come up with ideas. We want to do something with our boys. We also want to do stuff as men as well, and really talk about how do we strengthen the areas where we're weak, how do we look out for one another, but then also start building with our young boys, right? And we need to take these boys fishing. They need to go camping with us. We need to do things with them and not just tell them things. And when I say we, it's all of us, okay? So we're going to do that. We got some big plans. All right. So, all right, raffle ticket. 082. How many got 082? Just about everybody. Okay, so you're in the game. You're in the game. All right, 08278. Who has 78? Uh-oh. Okay, it's only out of y'all two. 787. All right, come on up. Yeah, come on up. Let's go. You check the ticket? All right. Because we do have cheaters up in here. If you ain't winning, you know, if you ain't cheating, you might not be winning, right? Okay, that's what they say, right? It works in certain areas. All right, so yeah, Charles is legit. Give Charles a hand clap. All right. We got one more. $082. Somebody said 806. You're close, but you're not close enough. No, you're 082. Who has 082 again? All right, who doesn't have 082? Everybody, I thought so. Okay, 08281. Let me see, 81. Who has the 81s? Okay, y'all are still in the game. 813. Come on. All right, wait, let me check, because you be lying. You be lying sometimes. I'm not saying you, but dudes, not you said. Let's see. Let's just double check. Let me see. Wait just a minute. Dog, that's a 4. No, I'm playing. All right, there you go. All right, here we go. There we go, Sid. Give Sid a hand clap. All right, guys, so let's do this. Listen, we're going to close up in prayer. We got the games here. I want to get you home at a decent time. So once the game is over, and even if you got to leave a little bit before, I understand that. I just wanted us to be together. And we're going to do this more often, okay? And so I want us to just close out in prayer and really ask God to bless this time, okay? So, Father, we thank you so much just for the men being together. God, I thank you for Lorenzo, his life, the legacy not only that he leaves behind, but the legacy that he lives. And God, we thank you for what you've done in his life. We thank you for his boys, his wife, and his girls. Father, we pray that you'd bless them even more. I ask that each and every one of us would see that through our experiences, through our life experiences, there's lessons that each and every one of us can learn, and that we would grow with one another and we will become the men that you've called us to be. Bless us, Jesus. In your name we pray. Everybody say, amen.